Welcome to Don't Ask That Question. I'm Kelly O'Mara, and I'm pleased to welcome my guest today, Sally Finck. She's
Hello.
Hi, Sally. She's smart, she's curious, and I think she's pretty tough. Sally started a conservative newspaper in her home state of Connecticut that most definitely leans left. Her career path to this journalistic endeavor is interesting. And how she hopes to make a difference in Connecticut is something I think that we should aspire to. So welcome, Sally.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you being on the show. So Sally, I'm going to kind of start at the beginning. You know, you come from a quintessential small town in Missouri. Is that right?
That's correct.
And
Yes.
why don't you tell us a little bit about your family, your education, and how you found yourself in Connecticut?
Well, let's see. So I grew up, yes, in a small town called Washington, Missouri, and it's right next to the river. It's in the middle of wine country. I recommend you visit if you like good wine. I grew up the oldest of five, so I was kind of, the pioneer of sorts, and kind of made my way through school. And so my younger siblings looked to me to, figure out what life was all about. Trying to think what else. So I had an interest in all kinds of things growing up. I was interested in how things worked, how they were built. I liked writing, I liked math, I liked science. And
Wow.
so I was interested in all of it. And I had the darndest time trying to figure out, the question, what are you going to be when you grow up? It's like, I don't know, so I think middle school, I was kind of thinking about doing some kind of engineering field because I liked the science and I liked how things worked. And so lo and behold, that was kind of my trek. But in the meantime, I was also doing, I had started piano lessons when I was in third grade. So I kept on playing the piano and taking lessons. So I got to high school, and I think it was maybe junior year or senior year. I was in physics one, physics two, loved all of that. But then I got to calculus, and I knew that calculus was a major component of engineering fields. And I just could not wrap my mind around abstract concepts. You got the train going from A to B, and then it's doing these other things. I'd sit there, I would get extra help. And for some reason, you get to the test, I would second guess myself. So my calculus record in high school, you look down the car, it's C's and D's. All right. And I'm like, I am not cut out for the engineering field. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was still doing the music thing. And I thought, well, I seem to be, talented at this, and I'm going to keep on going with music. So that's what I did. I went to the community college first, and then I transferred to St. Louis University and got my bachelor's. And I figured I may as well keep on going. And so I have a Master of Arts in Piano Performance from the University of Central Missouri. And from there, I moved out to Lawrence, Kansas for several years. I did 1 year of doctoral study before I decided that it was going to be a lot more school than I wanted to put myself through. And so I quit, so to speak, at the master's degree. And from there, I just kind of took a trek into learning some different things, from accounting to the French language to ballet, just kind of pursuing my hobbies along with music. And I worked as an accompanist at a high school. I worked as a music director for, most recently at a parish here in Connecticut. But while I was in Kansas City, I met one particular friend so she and I became friends, and she was from Connecticut. And I was kind of surprised because she didn't seem to have, for one thing, she didn't seem to have the Boston accent, so you couldn't really tell that she was from the Northeast.
Mhm.
But she had talked about, like, have you ever thought about, living in the Northeast or moving up there? And I was like, in the Midwest, you kind of have, there's like the Northeast stereotype. And as a musician, I'm like, well, I'm not from Juilliard. I thought you just had to be like super, super, super good to be, worthy to live up in the Northeast. But so between her and there was a cousin of mine, and I think some other, people who were just like, hey, have you ever thought about this? And I thought, well, I hadn't so far, but it sounds like an adventure, and I'd kind of my life had kind of, plateaued out, if you will. And I, wasn't tied down. So I thought, well, I think I'll give this a try. And so I visited New York City in 2014, and I liked it well enough. This was in the fall, so the colors were all beautiful.
Mhm.
Liked it well enough, and so in late 2015, I moved to Connecticut and thought, I'll give this a try, just kind of see how it goes. My dad has a cousin who lives up in Guilford, so I stayed with her for a few months before moving to Trumbull, and then I made my way here to Shelton. So that's and in the meantime, so I've taught piano students along the way, and so yeah, that's kind of the background story of how I got to where I am currently.
So your family, it sounded, I was reading your bio, it sounds they were mostly conservatives.
Yes, yep. So when I was growing up, I would hear my grandpa would have Rush Limbaugh on when I would go up to practice Grandma Steinway. So he would have Rush Limbaugh blaring through and I was like, who's this guy? Just talking on about stuff. And so I got to hear Rush. And it wasn't until later, of course, it's like, wow, he was a real, pioneer in talk radio, conservative talk radio. And but they were always talking about I think the fundamental idea is that more government was not the answer, that government created more problems than it solved. And I found that to be true. But so that was, they were definitely conservatives. I also vaguely remember the Reagan presidency. So they were, admired Reagan and
Right.
Margaret Thatcher. Yep. All that.
Right. Now you had an opportunity once it says that you were listening to former Congressman Ron Paul, and that
Yes.
sort of hit you. Explain
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. He got, I'm trying to think so that was around 2008. And I was in Lawrence, Kansas, and I had some other friends that I knew from grad school, or my master's degree. They were talking about the presidential candidates, and they mentioned Ron Paul. I said, we really like him. So I heard him speak, and he really had a perspective on what the role of government is. And I think he was known as Dr. No in
Mhm.
Congress. So I really liked what he had to say. Regarding all of that. So
Yeah, I don't think Ron Paul ever voted to increase a budget.
correct. Yeah, he really, I mean, he didn't go along with, I think, some of the things that I'd never thought about. I didn't really think about deficit spending or stuff like that. I don't think it was talked about as much. It was like lower taxes, maybe responsible spending, but something like sound money was, it's an idea that anyone can get behind. But
Mhm.
the conversation, like, how do you make that happen? Unless you've heard it before or read it
Right.
before. Mhm.
Right. I remember when I was a reporter at the Washington Times, I did a piece on gold,
Oh,
and
okay.
Ron picked it up and he put it in the congressional record.
Oh,
And
nice.
I remember thinking, oh, that's pretty cool. My article's in the
Yep.
congressional record. So it's part of history now.
You're right. You never know.
You never know, right? So anyway, okay. So what you also say in your bio that you were, quote, heartbroken to see our moral, social, and cultural decay accelerate over the last 5 years.
Mhm.
What do you mean by that? Give me some examples.
Well, let's see. Where do you start? I would say like just schooling in general, being in the public school. I think so. I kind of have a patchwork with school background. I went to a private school. I went to a public elementary school, homeschooled a couple years, and then public school for high school. But I mean, I'd say like back in the day, like 20 years ago, something like that. I don't even know. Like they were, some there were words that never existed, or they seemed the words that seemed to come out of nowhere. No one had heard about transgender, I don't know, 5 years ago,
Woke.
10 years ago. Woke, yeah. all of that. And so it seems to be the invention of new words that, or words that people are fearful of, that have really shaped, shaped the conversation. And it's contributed, I think, to the decay in fostering a mentality of victimhood, like I'm a victim of my circumstances, as opposed to, well, what happened to, having your own voice, or your own thoughts, and being able to express them. And it just seemed to be kind of out of the blue. Parents in particular, parents having a say in what their kids are learning.
Right.
I think that's really, it's important, and it's unfortunately gone downhill. As school administrators, I think they're forgetting their role. Yeah.
Do you think that it's like the tipping point has gone too far with what they're teaching very small kids? Having even thinking about teaching kindergartners about sex or trans anything.
Sure.
I mean, when I was in kindergarten, I didn't even know what sex was. Honestly, I had no clue. I was too busy eating, glue.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, it's kind of like conversations that should be, I'm going to use the word confined to your family. The school environment has assumed a lot of that. I'll say one of the things that has struck me over the past, 5 years is that a lot of what the either the family or the church used to do in society, like taking care of the poor, or feeding the hungry. I mean, there are churches that still do that, but so much of what we have in our government in terms of social programs used to be a function elsewhere in society with far less waste, and it didn't require a vote in Congress or a legislature.
Right, in the community was there. It was a community.
That's correct. Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Right. So you also bring up COVID and how that sort of tipped you into becoming a newspaper publisher. I love that. You're a newspaper publisher.
I am. I can't say it was on my bucket list, but I think, COVID was kind of I'm going to say maybe a mixed blessing in a lot of ways. Like, people found themselves in a very different world very quickly. And I think it can't be overstated that some people really kind of found themselves, if that makes sense. I don't know. They figured out who they were and what they were made of. And other people, I think, kind of retreated in a spirit of fear, almost like, oh well, I can't, look at what I can't do, or how much I'm not, in control of things. So I think people faced maybe their own internal personal battles, which is, see a lot of like prescription drugs for anxiety and all of that skyrocketed. But COVID-19, the way that people responded to that, it affected where I was working as a music director. The church shut down for about 4 months. I didn't know what to make of that. I mean, I'm a woman of faith, and I'm thinking to myself, like, well, I thought, God was in charge, but now we've got the state coming in and telling the church that they're closed, and all of this. But in particular, I noticed that a lot of, I'll say, like, the mainstream media, when COVID was first hitting the airwaves, I didn't feel afraid of the virus, but I was kind of, I kind of stood back and I watched. I'm a big observer. I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert. So I was standing back and wondering what to make of this. And the way
let me ask you, let me interrupt you there a minute. So when all of this happened and you were basically put out of work for 4 months, right?
Well, we made it work online, but there wasn't like an in-person gathering. So that was very different.
So, personally, did you believe what you were hearing from the federal government? Oh, we're all going to die and everybody's going to get this vaccine, and
I wasn't like I said, I guess I really didn't believe the lethality, supposedly of this thing, just because I thought, based on I will say I don't get regular TV, so I didn't see some of what was being put out there, and I think that definitely had an effect. But also then just the world around me, like nobody was really, that I could see, was dropping dead, or it was like there seemed to be, when I was seeing what I did see on either the new or the like the digital formats, it was like this, there was some kind of reality disconnect. And I think subconsciously, some people knew that. They
Right.
weren't quite sure why until a little bit later. The thing that kind of snapped me into like, okay, this really is, a full break, was when George Floyd died. The what I noticed was that the mainstream media, all of a sudden, this lethal virus went to the bottom of the news heap.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking, wait a minute, we're we're not worried about this, this lethal thing out of China anymore. And
Right.
when and people were not wearing their masks, and they were, just kind of doing what they were doing. And so that really told me, like, okay, there's,
Well, the rioters were allowed to riot, no
right.
masks,
They were,
no concern.
they didn't seem to, there didn't seem to be a problem. So that's, and I think, yeah, that's when you see that, you're going, okay, well, I'm not sure what the story is, but now I know what it isn't.
Right. And it gives start giving you questions. I mean,
Yes.
from the very beginning, I had questions just simply because, I covered Fauci as a reporter.
Yes. Yes.
And with his AIDS, HIV interventions. So as soon as I heard that he was in control, I was like, oh, okay, okay. I mean, it was just very clear to me what was
Mm,
going on. But again, I'm stilted because I covered him and I knew a lot about him before the whole COVID thing.
sure.
Um, didn't you go to a uh, a gathering in Connecticut where they were talking about COVID, and you were saying that you didn't like what the mainstream press was putting out, and you thought you could do a better job.
Yes, that was in early February. So it was a rally for, there was a Catholic superintendent who basically wanted to give parents the option to, have, like, not have a mask, about
Mhm.
2 weeks before our Department of Health was going to give the permission, or the say so to do that. So because of that, mere 2 week difference, the Department of Health was clamping down on the superintendent. So there was a rally to support him, and so about 30 parents were there, and I saw three of the major outlets here gathered there. They had their cameras and their notepads, and so they're doing all of that. And they, in particular, they had a lapel mic for a little girl who had been negatively affected by mask use in the classroom. She was isolated from her friend. They couldn't hold hands. I thought it was very sad. And so, so she spoke. She spoke for a bit, and we were all, very quiet and respectful. And but as those outlets were there, you think to yourself, like, I wonder what it's going to be, what the story is going to look like.
How it's going to be edited.
Right. What they're going to cut out and all of
Right.
that. Yep.
Right.
So yeah, so those trickled out, and the little girl's testimony, I think only like Fox 61 was there. They used just a snippet of her testimony. The other two outlets never even mentioned her. But yes, as we were all gathered there, that I know that they're not going to present everything that we were saying. I just kind of muttered to myself, like, I could do a better job.
So when you watched the news, did you watch the news? Did they cover it the way you thought they would?
I think I was sent some links, to their stories, and they gave more attention to, I think it was one of the Democratic representatives who said, like, well, yes, I'm proudly Catholic, but we have to, be concerned about safety and everything else. You know, as opposed to there are consequences, you know, on kids that are wearing these things. So, you know, it was just it's not
Right.
balanced. Yeah.
Right. So now if you fast forward 2 years, I suspect now we know that the vaccine, I honestly don't even like to call it a vaccine. I like to call it gene therapy because
Same. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
doesn't meet the definition of a vaccine. Well, they
That's-
changed the definition actually, so
They did.
it does now, but it didn't.
Yeah.
So we know now that it doesn't stop you from getting COVID, and it doesn't stop you from giving somebody COVID. So it's sort of a, I'm a little confused why they keep pushing it for everybody to get boosted, and and kids under 5, and
That's good.
it's mind-boggling. Is this something that maybe you would cover in the Connecticut Sentinel?
Yes, I'm covering some of that. This most recent edition, I actually did a little blurb on. They're calling it. It's kind of funny when they're caught with their hand in the cookie jar and they have to come up with something other than what they're actually doing. So I don't know if you've heard of sudden adult death syndrome, SADS.
Yes.
And so when you have people dying and you don't want to admit what's really going on, you have to concoct some kind of syndrome, as I see it, like some kind of syndrome to explain away these sudden deaths. In my experience, nobody keels over for no reason. There's always something wrong.
Right.
Underneath. And so it's, I love that your show is called Don't Ask That Question, because that's exactly the question they're not asking is what they're not willing to look at the question. Is the vaccine a part of this? Is it contributing in some way?
Well, again, I mean, if you're looking into it, then or I'm sure you've done the research. There's ample evidence through the VAERS system of people having cardiac issues, blood clots. I mean, we can go through a whole litany of adverse events that are associated with the vaccine. But you're right, they're not answering that question. But again, I'm a firm believer that eventually, the truth does come out. It can take a long time, and in the meantime, unfortunately, people may be harmed, terribly harmed, actually. So, so the Connecticut Sentinel is the name of your new newspaper, and do you have a copy of it there in front of you that you could kind of put up to the screen there and let everybody see? There you go. Isn't that wonderful? I just think that is absolutely wonderful. So you have, that's the headline story is 2,000 Mules Ripple Effects. What's that?
So this is, for those who saw Dinesh D'Souza's film, 2,000 Mules. This was covering ballot harvesting and ballot trafficking with their video evidence. And you had to go to, actually to see the film, you had to go directly to the link. So Connecticut, our theaters here, it was like if you went to the AMC website or whatever, they're not going to show that film on the listing. You had to kind of know about it. But people here are concerned about that. It's election security is one of the very hot topics up here, and it's because there have been numerous cases over the years, not simply anecdotal things, but filings with the SEEC on fraudulent ballots, people submitting information that was either not verifiable, not true at all. And so that's an epidemic problem. So we were thrilled that Dinesh was covering some of that.
Oh yeah. That was amazing. It's interesting. Yesterday, I actually was a poll watcher here in Nevada, and I learned a great deal about it. And I have to say I did it for 2 reasons. One was to, kind of do something for my community. The other was I was curious how it all worked, simply because of, the reports of such vote fraud in the 2020 election. So I learned a great deal. My numbers of people who dropped off their in-hand ballot into our little box was the same I had on my computer, was the same number in the box. So I felt very good about that.
That's always good.
Yeah. I wasn't going to be sent to the principal. How did you do that? You know what I mean? So it was interesting. It was very, very interesting to see how the process worked. And I'm really glad I did it. So tell me some of the issues that, you're looking forward to covering there in Connecticut. Connecticut is, let's face it, it's as about a left as you can get. And I was looking up some statistics. I think the last time you had a Republican senator was in 1984, 88.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah. So let's see. Issue wise, goodness, it is kind of a plethora of things. And part of the problem is because, because of like media imbalance, but one of the, let's see, in addition to the election security issues, things like, like the medical establishment, there are people who are concerned that our hospitals up here, we actually only have two major conglomerates that own almost all of our hospitals, Yale New Haven Health, and then Hartford Health, I think is the other one. So it's almost a healthcare monopoly. And there have been numerous stories of people, especially when you had COVID policies coming down, like, could you get access to care, or, a lot of us are afraid to go to the emergency room or wherever because we don't know what kind of questions might be asked. We don't know what they might try to do.
Or require of you.
Yeah, right. So that's one thing that I'm highlighting in my paper is some of the healthcare stuff, the election things. Education is another one. And one regular segment that I hope to keep on doing, let's see if I can find it here. This is my favorite. This is called Yale Fail.
And what is that?
Yale Fail, it basically covered, well, Yale is at one time was a very respected school. It's an Ivy League school, and but they have been a lot more woke over the years as well. And so you have I picture an ivory tower that is very closed, and the only people that you're really concerned about or talking to are other people in the ivory tower. So Yale Fail kind of it highlights some of the issues that they're trying to bring forward, but I kind of dig into the words, like, what does this actually mean? What are they actually talking about? And the most recent one is actually inviting people to think critically when they're looking at an article, to be able to say, well, here's this claim the guy is making about carbon, or what is it? Carbon something has carbon emissions. That's it. Carbon emissions has increased 30% since the guy started working there. It's like, well, when did he start working there? What does he mean by?
Oh, I see.
Right. So it's it's just highlighting that these are the experts that are just kind of putting out words, and you don't really know what they're even talking about or what they mean, but they're coming up with all kinds of frameworks and different schools. Yale has all kinds of institutes and initiatives, and they're all funded and all of that. So it's just kind of poking fun at, like, here's an idea that really doesn't, it's not going to fly, but so I call it Yaleville.
I love it. So, they have a huge endowment too.
They do. Yes.
And it's one of those things I'd love to look into myself, because all of the Ivy League schools have huge endowments.
Yes.
In the billions of dollars that they're just sitting on and investing,
Yeah, and I think Yale doesn't pay any taxes, which is really astonishing. But
they don't.
They don't pay any taxes. Nope, they don't pay any taxes. So they've got I think it was like there's a figure that said maybe it was 3 billion with the endowment, but yeah, they don't pay taxes. I don't think.
State tax.
Yeah, I think it's like state taxes they don't pay.
Huh, interesting. I
Yeah,
didn't
so
know that.
yeah,
Why are they like Disney down in Florida? They got a sweetheart deal back in, you know,
they
1802.
they may well have, but I do want to look into that and figure out, kind of why that is. Because it does seem, yeah. And there's the residents of New Haven, like they're the ones that pick up the tab with their
Right,
tax rate. So it's
right.
very yeah, very unequal. And a lot of people are like, Yale should pay its fair share. So
That's
yeah,
interesting. Oh, that is a good story. I'd find out why.
yeah.
What other issues politically? We're going into the November elections.
Oh
You know,
yes.
what do you see in the future for the November elections?
For the November elections, yeah, I think there's going to be a red wave here in Connecticut. There are a number of seats that are, like what we have candidates that are solid, that are definitely, sticking to principles, but so they're before the November election, we actually have August primaries up here. The Democratic Party, from what I understand, doesn't have primaries. I forget why that is. I think for the Democratic Party in Connecticut, they choose their guy or their gal straight out of the gate. And so they're focused until November. For the Republicans, we have a convention, and so the convention determines who the endorsed candidate is. But if you have candidates that are kind of like second place, if they make it over 15%, then you can primary them. So for a lot of slots, like there's no challenger, and I think those people are gonna get into office, especially if we can get our ground game up a bit. But
Mhm.
but the ones that are primaried, what's interesting is that the GOP, I mean, the Republican Party here is frankly divided, and has been for a while, between I'm going to say constitutional conservatives versus what we call the rhinos, the Republican in name only. And
Mhm.
so in one particular race, I mean, you have one candidate who is more or less a rhino, and you have two. So the two that are running against her in the primary are much more constitutional conservatives. So what we face is people are saying, well, the constitutional, the conservative vote is going to split between the two
Right.
candidates, and we're going to be stuck with the rhino in office. And so it's those kinds of things that my paper tries to highlight. These are the ones that stick to principle. I will say, like, I'm not limited to the Republican Party. There is one libertarian candidate for governor that I have made a mention of in this past newspaper, only because conservative Republicans who don't want to vote for our endorsed candidate, who's Bob Stefanowski, I say, well, they're either going to vote third party anyway, or they're not going to vote. They are that convicted, like they're not going to vote for Bob. So is like their vote's going that way anyway.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know in terms of like the U.S. Senate that's the race with the two constitutional conservatives, and then
Oh. Hmm.
yeah, and then like I mean
And
the right.
that's who are your senators or
Let's
Blumenthal?
see, it's Blumenthal and Murphy. It's Blumenthal's seat that is up for reelection this year.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
going to be, yeah, who can go against Blumenthal. And the
Right.
frustrating thing with him is that he's got a massive war chest, all kinds of money. So he has the financials, behind it. But I will say he's polling the lowest he's polled in a long, long time. So I do think somebody's going to unseat him.
Hmm. So within this endeavor that you started, this Connecticut Sentinel, walk us through the process of being a publisher. What do you have to do?
Yeah, well, it's been, I'll say it's been quite a learning curve. I So I work with an online template, and it was the one that I started kind of playing around with. So in the first 2 to 3 days, I think I get story ideas and I will jot down, notes for things. I might look up the Yale fail first, and kind of put that in. And then so I will find, articles that talk about these various issues, and kind of see what, if I can connect some dots in between them. And I put the paper together, as it's kind of like theater, like I'll work a little bit, each day on something. And I'm kind of like, it's a juggle, balance between my time. I do still teach piano students, so it's kind of like doing that and the paper. But so there's an
You have
online,
to live.
right? Yeah, real life. So I do that. So I work on the paper basically through like right now it's been weekly. I'm actually scaling it back a bit just because I have to live. But there's like by Tuesday night, I usually have everything kind of situated. So the template allows me to do editing. It allows me to put images, in there. And so then once I've got, right now it's been 8 pages. The template can add or take away 4 pages at a time. So I can't put in like 1 or 2 pages. If I add, it has to go, to 12 or whatever.
Okay.
And but so at the as I flesh out ideas, like I'm reading through the article as well, and I'm thinking about, is this resonating with people? Is this something that I feel people are concerned about, or that will be relating to Connecticut? So it might be a national issue like 2,000 mules, but then I kind of tie it in and go, how is our state dealing with that? What's our Secretary of State doing? Here's a candidate that's, running for Secretary of State. So kind of bringing all of that together so that people can relate to it and do something about it.
So are you ever going to have reporters reporting for you? And
yeah, that's on its way. Obviously I can't do it all.
You could put in the paper section where people can write in an opinion piece.
Yes, I've got some people lined up to write. There's actually a lady interested in a health and wellness column, and I do have some op-eds and things like that I'm going to be putting in there. Some advertisers are really hopping on board. So yeah, so the infrastructure is really it's getting there. There's like a stellar ground team. Like it's kind of fast-paced growth, but I'm going to be bringing people on board to cover more of this stuff, so that we can get a quality voice for people out there on the ground.
Oh, I understand that you've been thinking about an article about the governor. Apparently the governor's had some interesting situation with an investigation.
It's an investigation into let's see, I think it's the hiring of there's a man named I think his name is Constantis Diamantis. It's a Greek name. I never can remember the first name. He goes by Costa Diamantis. And what was kind of unusual about that whole story was that, there's a timeline of kind of when things happened. So the governor is being investigated if he had like a conflict of interest, I think, with all of that. And I don't know if the investigation itself is ongoing. There's a portion of it that has been closed, I believe. But there's there are other puzzle pieces, and there's one in particular that I'm kind of looking into now. But there's it remains to be seen if our governor is still under FBI investigation. Don't know.
Also, so the FBI was investigating at some point.
Yes. Yep. They were going through those different things, and trying to think, there were, there's some details, all kinds of like good stuff in there, reading the reports.
So do you have any fear of being censored? Do you have any fear of any kind of retribution if you start writing these hard-hitting pieces?
Well, it's certainly a possibility that I think from the beginning, I remember thinking, in this kind of environment, you never know. It's important to, uh, as I say, like learn how to smell rats, learn how to like grow eyes in your head, as they say. So right now I don't feel like that's, a big threat, but I'm sure that as people who are leftists or whatever that disagree, they're going to try to smear my paper. They'll probably they may say something like, well, she's not really qualified, she didn't go to journalism school, all of that. So yeah, I don't know, it kind of remains to be seen. Right now I haven't had a whole lot of pushback, I don't think. But it's going to be interesting as it goes forward.
So how many have you put out so far? How many of your new paper? How many editions?
Let's see. So I have printed with this last shipment, I've printed 4. And so some of my previous issues have kind of made their way around the state. So that's been exciting. I think I'm going to say to this point, maybe close to 1,000 have been, just kind of dispersed in, friends telling friends, word of mouth stuff. But yeah, about 1,000 papers. And I think it's for maybe every paper that's put out there, it's like 3 or 4 reader, so the reach of it is maybe like 5,000 people. I don't know. And then you factor in social media. So,
So do your local businesses allow you to kind of put a paper rack there and let people take one, or?
Well, we're kind of finding that out, and I don't know. We're kind of getting samples out there and seeing if stores will carry them. Like-minded businesses are a part of that, and if not, it's like one of my piano professors would say, make them say no. Make
Exactly.
them say no.
Yeah. So are you delivering it, by hand to people's houses? Or you?
Let's see. I've gotten a couple of the earlier editions. I had distributed them to. There was actually like a drop off point near Southbury, so I said, here's so and so. I keep a spreadsheet of the subscribers. It's manually right now, but yeah, I've gotten to send them out, to people.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. Now that's a whole nother aspect of it, because if you do get subscribers, they can be all over the state.
Right.
So
Yeah.
how are you delivering that to everybody?
Well, so that's where like bulk mailing comes in. So to do bulk mailing, you can have like a kind of a more local printer who will, and in that case, so part of the front page would be modified with the address. And so if you're a person who gets like a newspaper in your mailbox, that's what they do. So you pay, I think it's all kind of one fee, but then the mailing house would send that out to your door. So right now there's I think the threshold to do that is like 200, got to be 200 pieces or something. So not there yet, but it's going to get there. So yeah, it's one of the plates I'm juggling.
So yeah. I'm fascinated by this. So right now you don't have 200 subscribers.
Not official 200 subscribers.
Okay.
Not yet.
So do you have to deliver these to your subscribers?
Well, so right now they are in the mail. Like there's I wish I had an example. Like there's like one of the envelopes. It's like yeah, and I try what I've done thus far is like kind of bundle them, just because it hasn't been a weekly printing, but like 2, couple issues, maybe 3 issues have been, sent to them. Yeah, just to.
And you have to pay the bulk rate. You're paying a bulk rate for that?
Not yet. Those would be, like kind of one-offs, but seeing if I can make that, work until we get to that threshold. So yeah.
Okay. So what is your hope down the road? What's your hope for this?
Oh
as
yeah.
being a publisher of a weekly newspaper.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be explosive growth. And it's kind of a double-edged sword like that, but I think there's a tremendous hunger in Connecticut for alternative voices, something that's countering the leftist narrative. And we've had, voices from time to time, but never something that's in print. So there's something about that people really like. They're really like, wow, I can read it in front of me, I can share it with people. So I think it's going to take off. I see it taking off. Like, it's only been 3 months since I began this whole thing, and I've been blown away, by the responses of people. So it's anybody's guess, but I'm shooting for the stars. Yep.
I love that. I love it. So I'm going to wrap this up, but as a side note, I'm sure you're aware, as a newspaper publisher now,
Mhm.
that most newspapers don't make money. Okay, they bring in just enough to do the printing and pay their reporters, but they don't make money. I think a lot of them actually lose money.
Yeah.
But they, like the Times, the Washington Times, I think it's always lost money, but it's still in business 30 years later. So I don't know that it's gonna it's gonna make you wealthy, that's for sure. But
It
you're
won't
gonna have
make
a
me wealthy, I don't think, but I think there's, people when they see that there's a voice that's, echoing them and seeing that they're being heard. I mean, I don't know, I can't, speak to the other papers, but knowing that I'm reaching, a large audience is like, there's people up here, like when I moved up here, I'm like, well, it's pretty well a blue state. But as you talk to people and you kind of get to know the lay of the land, it's like, now there's a market for it up here. But I think I'm actually in process of making this into like a nonprofit. I think the
oh,
Epic
okay.
Times is actually a nonprofit. So as long as there's the funding there to have some reporters and have that's kind of, I envision it kind of like the Epic Times for Connecticut. And so yeah, that's I'm hoping that it will reach many people, even if it's yeah, I said I may not be a millionaire, but people will know my name. So,
So Sally, how can people contribute to you or help you get started? How can they do that?
well, let's see. So they can, if they want to write, I can be, there's actually a couple of different Proton mail addresses. One of them is, so they can do the, with a capital T, the CTS, and that's all caps, CTS. And the S is the beginning of Sentinel. So you have after the S, ENTINEL at proton.me. For now, if they want to donate, you know about the website, how crazy that gets. For now, and they can, if they want to make a donation, I have a Venmo, and it's at Sally with a capital S dash and then capital F, and there's 2 pianos there because that's as I'm a concert pianist. So, but they can they can chip in there, and I'm getting I'm gonna have like, oh, the website is at there's no triple W in front, but if they go to CT, it's all lowercase, CTSENTINEL, so ctsentinel.com. They can check out the website and read some blog articles. I also have a Telegram channel. It's public, the Connecticut Sentinel. That's on there, and there's a Facebook page, but I'm not as active on Facebook. So so there's several ways, and I'm finding out other other ways to get that going.
Well, thank you. I'm really, really thrilled for you. I think it's wonderful. My hat's off to you if you're doing it. I wish you all the luck in the world, and maybe we'll catch up again down the road, see how you're doing.
Yeah.
But good luck and thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Kelly.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right.